Have we actually reached peak inflation? This is the weekly report on Major Money Matters. Welcome to Major Money Matters. My name is Major. I'm a mortgage broker powered by Edge Home Finance, and you've stumbled across the weekly report. This is a report that we put out weekly. It helps keep you informed of economic matters, everything that's going on, and how it's affecting your home buying or potentially home selling process. So if this is your first time here, I encourage you to like and subscribe to this channel. You get notified every single time we post the weekly report. So let's start with this, all right? This is mortgage-backed securities. And let's bring this up again because we're starting to see a pretty important trend here. If you've been following along with us, we've told you that as this line trends down, the interest rates are going up. And as this line trends up, interest rates are going down. So each one of these little candlesticks is what represents the movement of the market for mortgage-backed securities in one day. So you see that we've been going down, but if you look at since about April 11th or so, we've kind of stayed in generally the same area. So we've seen interest rates kind of level out per se. If you're in a government loan, VA, FHA, USDA, if you're in a government loan, you're probably seeing interest rates somewhere in the mid 4s to high 4s. Lower credit scores, you're probably seeing a little bit higher. Of course, we showed you last week that the average interest rate is about 5.1. I didn't check this week. I think we're up to about 5.125, somewhere in that range for the average interest rate. So you're kind of seeing rates level out here. Okay. By the way, if you're in a conventional loan, you should expect somewhere in the mid 5s. If it's on a good day, maybe you're in the low 5s. If you have a lower credit score, you're probably in the 6s on conventional loans. So, this is what we're seeing. So all things considered, I'm okay with this, leveling out for 2 weeks or so, and I'm happy with it. And this has gotten some people asking the question of, hey, has inflation peaked out? Or have we reached peak inflation? Have we seen it get as bad as it's going to get? And the answer to that question is maybe temporarily. So I want to throw this up here. This is the CPI readings, okay? And this is important because this shows the CPI readings, Consumer Price Index, for last year. Now, Consumer Price Index measure comes out every single month. CPI is basically, in layman's terms, how much you have to pay for crap. And we told you that CPI reading last week is about 9%. So you're paying about 9%, for sake of math, let's say 10% higher year over year relative to what you were paying for goods and services this time in 2021. So you're seeing higher inflation. So CPI numbers came out earlier, and really the market didn't really react to that that much. So, people are thinking maybe inflation is as bad as it's going to get. But does that mean that interest rates are pretty much pegged out? Because I've told you that the greatest indicator for interest rates is inflation. Inflation numbers represent interest rates because investors believe that inflation is going to be higher. Therefore, they charge higher for long-term investments. Mortgages, 15, 20, 30-year bonds that represent how much you're going to pay for a mortgage. So if inflation goes up, the return or demand on mortgage-backed securities is going to be higher. That translates into a higher interest rate for you. So we look at this chart here, and I want you to pay attention here to the readings in July, August, and September. And why are those readings important in July, August, and September? Well, you wonder why were there low CPI numbers? First of all, last year during that time, if you remember, this is when COVID gave us the head fake. like, hey, we're going to be good, and nope, we're not going to be good. And the Delta variant came out, and then, most of the country started shutting down again due to the Delta variant. So that's why you see this lull in the CPI numbers here, because that's when the Delta variant was out. And then you see this, things start to pick up in October of last year. So when the CPI numbers come out, the new inflation numbers replace the old inflation numbers. And I believe that when the July numbers and the August numbers, September numbers come out, they're going to be significantly higher than the current, the numbers that are currently available. Therefore, relatively, you're going to see interest rates spike again. That's what I believe, through the summer. So you might see some lulling out here, all things remaining equal. Okay, now we haven't talked about the effect of the new COVID variant on Shanghai, China. They're talking about shutting down Shanghai. There's a massive amount of ships that are actually outside of Shanghai that can't get into Shanghai because they basically have shut down that port. Okay. In fact, I'm going to throw this picture up. This picture is interesting. This shows the amount of ships that are actually outside the port of Shanghai that cannot get in to Shanghai, China. That lets you know what's going on there. Now let's go back to our inflation numbers, our CPI numbers. So I believe that you're going to see a spike in interest rates through the summer months, and then you see some settling out in October, possibly trending into recession. And why is that important? Because I told you, get into a property now. When the opportunity comes, refinance that property. Okay, yes, the interest rate is going to be higher. You can't really change that, but get into that property now and then refinance that property later on when interest rates go down. 2023, that's probably when you will see a recession. All right, so some other things I want to key in on. All right, let's talk about, this is a good one. Homes are receiving fewer bids as prices increase. Now, this is an interesting article here because this came out from Redfin. And Redfin saying that, hey, you're going to see less competition and fewer bids on homes. But take a look at this chart. This chart, you're seeing, they're referencing this February 22 to March 22. They're referencing literally this 1.7% dip in the amount of homes with multiple offers. Now, take a look at this chart, and this goes from April 20th to March 22nd. And they're saying that in a month, this went down 1.7%. That's equivalent to you going to the bathroom and using the bathroom, coming out of the bathroom and saying, I lost weight. That's exactly how much this exactly affects the housing market. So, I mean, if you want to take the fact that there's, or the assertion that there's 1.7% less homes with multiple offers on them as a sign in the downturn of the market, that's fine by me. But there's still a lot of competition out there. There's still a lot of, aggressive bidding on homes. And if you want to get into a home, I recommend you be just as aggressive. Take the advice of your realtor. Now, there are some deals out there to be had. So there are some out situations, depending on what part of the market or what part of the world or what part of the nation you're in. There are some deals out there to be had. But in general, you're still seeing a lot of competition. So I also wanted to talk about this. People say, hey, the interest rates are high and, it's just getting so difficult to buy a home. Yeah, but it's just getting difficult for you to have shelter, because guess what else is up? This is the 11th straight month of record level rent gains. So if you say, hey, I'm just going to go rent, the challenge becomes, yeah, you can go rent, but those are higher too. So you're dealing with the same issues in the cost of living, whether you're buying or whether you're renting. You might as well invest in yourself, invest in your family's future, and get into a home. Guess what? If you rent, you cannot drop that rent price. You can't refinance and drop a rent price, but you can refinance and drop a mortgage price when interest rates go down. I want to zoom in here on this chart that's a part of this, because, this is interesting. Because many of the places where we service families, we're seeing dramatic rent increases. San Diego, California, rental year over year, 17% higher. Texas, in the Austin, Texas area, 14% higher. Dallas, Texas area, 13% higher there. Honolulu, our home, even nearly 10% higher in rents year over year. That means if you're renting a place at $3,000, that rent's going to go up. That rent is now up to approximately $3,300. So those things are not changing. You might as well get into a home and build equity for yourself. So I throw this up here, just a quick comparison here, because people say, hey, when housing prices are hot, that means that there's an opportunity for a housing bubble. And I am working on a video, the case against a housing crash, even as interest rates are rising. But this is something to take note of. No matter how high interest rates go, we still have a supply and demand issue in the nation. So if you look at existing home inventory, and this is measured at the end of March, existing home inventory, in 2007, there were 3.8 million homes available for sale. If you compare that to 2022, there are 950,000 homes available for sale. So even if you compare it to, hey, this is the same thing we saw in 2008 where there was a housing crash. There was an oversupply. In order for there to be a housing crash, you have to have a lot of supply and not a lot of demand, which creates essentially a bubble. But right now, we have a lot of demand and simply not enough supply. So I believe you're going to continue to see upward pressure on home prices. And if you wait and say, hey, I'm going to wait until interest rates drop to get into a home, the challenge is everybody else that's waiting till interest rates drop are going to come back into the market. And then you're going to have a huge problem competing once again in 2023, because you're going to competing with these people who went away and now are coming back into the market. Now, I understand the concern with rising interest rates. That's why I encourage you to use Lock and Shop. Get pre-approved. Lock in your rate, then go shopping. You can lock for now. We have lenders that can lock up to 120 days. So if that's something you're interested in, reach out to me and my team, get pre-approved, and then lock in your rate for up to 120 days while you're still shopping for a home. So that's it for this week. I hope you got a lot of information. Hopefully it empowers you to go win in this market. See you next time on Major Money Matters.